One of the priorities for Prime Minister Modi on this trip to the United States of America is going to be reaching out to the American business community and to be sending the world a message that investors should return to India. That's what he wrote in his op-ed in the Wall Street Journal as well. Can Mr. Modi convince the United States of America that he means business? Literally on a trip where some are saying Wall Street, metaphorically, may prove to be more important than Washington. And how are Indian business leaders looking at this trip? Because remember, before he can convince the Americans, he has to convince Indian business that he means business. Let's get a sense here in New York from some of our prominent business voices. Ajay Shriram, president of the CII, the Confederation of Indian Industries. Ajit Gulabchand, one of our best known business voices and industrialists. And Chandrajit Banerjee, also of the CIA. Ajit, I'd like to start by asking you, your takeaway so far, do you think Mr. Modi has made the right noises, and how does this go beyond rhetoric to actually sending a message to American business that something has changed in India as far as the ease of business or doing business is concerned?
So much had gone wrong between America and India in terms of trust. Forget the political issues, petty issues, but also economically, because of the bad policies of the past few years. People who had invested lost money and had lost trust that India is good for business. I think what a Prime Minister is trying to do is restore that trust by saying that we are open for business, we're going to change all those things that caused you the harm, caused you to feel India is not good for business. And I think this visit is not about actually getting investment, but repairing the old damage, that India is open and that the new government is going to make those things happen. And I think in that context he's succeeding quite well, because people are now started looking at India again.
But you know, Ajay Shriram, even as Mr. Modi moves to Washington, the US Chamber of Commerce and certain affiliated businesses have written a letter to President Obama saying that the economic messaging from India remains mixed. Now, obviously, American concerns are the position India took at the World Trade Organization, retrospective tax, intellectual property rights. Do you see Mr. Modi making a break from the past on these economic policies?
I think so. I think let's try to segregate the business issues from WTO and in those transactions, because I think they are not directly linked.
Okay.
We have to make a change in the Indian culture for attracting investment, for growth of India and for the corporates which come in. I think in the last 3 months, what the Modi government has attempted to do, they have already set the direction in terms of ease of doing business, in terms of rules, regulations, in terms of removing outdated laws, in terms of facilitating the environment, opening up the economy, FDI at larger percentage. I think this messaging is something which has to be reinforced further in the American system for them to really absorb and understand what's happening. I think one is the American companies in India. We had a meeting just now, we attended the Make in India program over there. And American companies, Lockheed Martin, their representative spoke also at that gathering. I think they are seeing a change. They are seeing what's happening. So I think that is the reason why it's going to take a little time with the American business community. But the direction is right, the selling is happening. I think a little more conviction needs to be developed.
But you know, before I come to Chandrajit, Ajit, if I can ask you, there was a certain amount of anticipation when the first budget was presented, and the people said, no, they haven't moved fast enough domestically on economic reform. So at the Make in India page, Narendra Modi called FDI first, develop India. My question to you is the Indian business community convinced that there's a change? Because before you convince the world, we have to convince ourselves.
See, we are convinced that he's going to change it. We are convinced.
Has it changed yet? Do you see any signs?
On the ground, a lot of things are still to change.
Yes.
A lot of things are in a preparatory stage. But they haven't really changed. The damage done by the last few years is quite enormous. It has hampered the entire and vitiated the investment environment in the country. And that is what is under repair. First, the confidence. And the second, as far as Indians are concerned, they've started looking at the possibility of investment. They started looking at the possibility of getting clearances for their projects. So to that extent, there is a palpable change. But it hasn't come to the level where you say, go India as yet. And I think the American businesses here will also tell our Prime Minister what they think they would like to see before they really look at India as a business investment destination. And I think that's very important, to take that home and mix it with what Indian business wants and create those things fast enough.
But
I wish they would do it fast enough.
You wish they'd move faster.
I wish they move fast enough.
What have been the early signs from the government that convinces you that change will come?
You see, there are quite a few things which have happened. It's not that nothing has happened so far. There are, we see movement on the ease of doing business that he's talked about. It's PM's call, but at the same time, we see the decentralization taking place, all the ministries working on it. There are early signs, say for instance, labor, there are amendments. Second, you see the type of autonomy being given to the states in terms of being flexible on some of the main issues that the industry face. Again, labor, land, etc. So that things can move fast, and it's happening actually. Simplification is taking place. You've seen Madhya Pradesh yesterday announcing self-certification and things like that. So there are early signs. Second, you see the sentiments. Business has got a lot to do with sentiments, and today the sentiment change is phenomenal. And that he has been able to do by saying that I'll roll out the red carpet for Indian business.
Not cut the red tape and roll out the red carpet.
Absolutely.
Ajit?
See, the important thing is, yes, why I would like to see it faster is because with every increasing day, the ability to create basic reform diminishes unless you have done them right away. So I hope that they would now pay attention between now and February when the budget comes out to make those reform and changes which Chandrajit just talked of, how they are in the preparatory stage. Some things have already changed. There is change in the air, and there is a clear trust that the change will come about.
Okay. I just want to get last comments from all of you now. Ajay, Shriram, what about some of the specific differences? The optics are good, the sentiment has changed, there's change in the air. But there is also an ideological difference, even in the India under Narendra Modi, on many of the key issues I mentioned. WTO, for example, IPR is another issue where American pharmaceutical companies see this as a trade barrier. India sees it as a right to create generic drugs. So how do you see these specifics resolving themselves?
I think these need to be discussed through dialogue. That is the only way out. I think India has to look at what's good for them also. And we are not the only ones to do this. It's been done by other countries too. So I think the situation on IPR per se, I think Indian rules and their direction is quite okay. It's a direction which is okay for India. It's been done by other countries too. I think it can carry on. I think the important point is, let's not look at only one issue, but I think India as an investment destination, again coming back to Make in India, they've talked about 25 different industries. I think, where else have we ever heard any government saying, I'm pro-business, I'm pro-poor? These are the sentiments which bring about an attitudinal change in the way the government runs the country. I mean, if we see today the sort of pressure coming on politicians and bureaucrats in terms of bringing about change, accountability, in terms of it's a fact, people don't realize this, but we run factories. Just a clean office makes a world of a difference. Psychologically, look at it differently. I think Mr. Modi is a hands-on CEO who's keen to get results fast. He's pushing his people hard, and the results, can't come in 3 months.
Hands-on CEO is an interesting description. Ajit and then Chandrajit.
Listen, two things. First is WTO is a non-issue.
Non-issue? Not for the Americans.
Listen, no, I'm sorry. The entire West gives a huge subsidy of $450 billion, and it's garbed under environmental clearances. So, therefore, those are also issues to be looked at. Second is the subsidy that India will give is very small in comparison, and given our country, it's only exerting his right to say that while we will try to follow, we will not commit that we will never do it. So I think it's a non-issue, whatever you might say. But the other side, when it comes to this, when we talked of big ticket reform, I think one of the biggest reform that Modi has made is closing down the Planning Commission. Planning Commission represented the central policy of a socialist idea or a communist idea that all resources will be controlled by the state, including what Barkha will do. And therefore, closing it down is signaling central planning is out, markets and people will decide. And I think it's a huge big ticket reform, a departure from the past socialist India. And I think it has been missed by the media how important it is.
Chandrajit, quick last word. What have you picked up from the American business leaders that all of you must have been making?
So actually being in US, one would like to really focus on what the bilateral issues. I think over the last 2 years, we have seen the rhetoric coming not only from the US administration, but also from the business. And you talked about the letter. Now, there were several dialogues that we had between US and India. Be it, the strategy dialogue has just re-begun,
Yeah,
which is great. But there were several others. It was defense, it was education, it was technology. These have not been meeting for the last couple of years. So the dialogue between US and India, that has suffered terribly. And when you don't have a dialogue, when you are not talking to each other, these rhetorics come up. So as far as business is concerned in India, both Indian businesses and US businesses had almost the same grievances against India.
Yeah.
So that's what is going. You get back to talks, you start explaining your problems, you start solving it, it can be done. And this visit is therefore so very significant because we wish to see a restart of all these dialogues which was stalled for the last couple of years.
And any 10-second last comments or takeaway from Mr. Modi's visit so far?
I think his purpose is to create an environment with the United States of collaborative working. His talk today at the UN.
Yeah.
I can't think of another leader who's been as inclusive as
Okay.
Mr. Modi has been on all aspects
Ajit?
of social and business.
Quickly.
Well, I hope he is opening the doors again and starting the dialogue, as Chandrajit said. The other important thing that he needs to do is listen to American business. What they want is no different from what Indian business wants.
I think that's the note to end on. I think all of you have made that point, that what Indian businesses has been upset about is the same thing that American businesses is upset about. Chandrajit Banerjee, Ajit Gulabchand, Ajay Shriram, thank you so much for joining us. An interesting description there of Narendra Modi as a hands-on CEO. Can he convince American CEOs that he means business?